At the port, I handed my parents 2 cruise tickets. My father smiled, but not at me. He looked at Daniel instead. Daniel stood straight, his shirt pressed, his shoes shining in the sun. My mother's hand rested on his arm like it belonged there. I waited for my father to take the tickets from me. Instead, he leaned closer to Daniel and spoke low but clear. "We thought Daniel should come instead." I froze. "Instead of me?" He nodded once, like it was already decided. "He'll take care of us." "You'd only complicate things." Daniel reached forward and slid the tickets from my hand. He placed them smoothly into his pocket like they had always been his. My sister laughed softly, covering her mouth with her hand. People nearby turned to look, whispering, pointing. "That's the real son now." Someone muttered behind me. "They chose better." Another voice said, louder this time. Laughter rippled across the dock as I stood holding my suitcase. My parents walked toward the ship, steps steady, eyes ahead. They didn't look back. Not once. Daniel carried their bags, smiling wide, waving at the crowd. The 3 of them climbed the gangway together. And I stayed behind. Alone. On the way back, I dragged my suitcase across the dock. At the taxi stand, I counted coins into the driver's hand. He sighed loud enough for everyone to hear. Behind me, Daniel tapped his card without even looking. The cashier smiled at him, not at me. "You see the difference?" a man whispered to his wife. I heard every word. I didn't answer. Silence is heavier than anger, and I carried it home. On the bus, the seat beside me stayed empty. Passengers leaned closer, staring, phones glowing in their hands. Jason, a dockhand I once helped, shouted across the aisle. "Guess they picked the better man." The bus shook with laughter. I sat still, staring at the floor, my fists closed tight. The ride home felt longer than every extra shift I worked. Every bump rattled my suitcase, every laugh cut deeper. The bus was silent, but inside me the noise didn't stop. At home, my phone buzzed with photos already posted online. My parents smiled on the deck of the ship, glasses raised. Daniel stood proudly between them, arm around my mother. The caption read, "Dreams come true. Family forever." But family didn't mean me. It meant Daniel instead. Comments piled up below. "What a son-in-law! So proud! Such a blessing to your parents." Another neighbor typed proudly. Not one comment asked where I was. Not one word mentioned me. Through the window, I heard neighbors talking, their voices sharp. "They finally chose better," one of them said. Another replied, "Who can blame them? He had nothing." Their laughter reached my kitchen table like it belonged there. I opened the drawer, pulling out receipts from the last year. Every slip carried my name. Every transfer came from me. Months of skipped meals, nights without sleep, double shifts. All for tickets I would never use. I thought of tearing them, burning them, throwing them away. But proof doesn't vanish, even when people try to erase it. I slid the receipts back into the drawer. Wait waits. And wait doesn't leave. That night my sister called. Her voice was sugar at first. Then it turned sharp. "They're happy now. Don't ruin this. Daniel Fitz. You don't." I listened, the phone warm in my hand, but said nothing. When she hung up, the silence in the house felt endless. I looked in the mirror at the man they left behind. Lines on my face, calloused hands, tired eyes they never noticed. They wanted someone polished. Someone easier. Someone else. I wasn't him. Later, a neighbor posted a photo in the local group. Me, standing on the porch with my suitcase. Caption: "His family left without him. Daniel took his place." The comments were the same: laughter, mockery, silence from me. They gave him pride. They gave him trust. They gave him my place. Their noise filled the dock. Their laughter followed me home. Noise fades. Silence doesn't. The cruise lasted 10 days. 10 days of photos, captions, and comments I couldn't escape. Every morning, My phone buzzed with another smiling picture. My parents on the deck. Daniel standing tall beside them. My sister tagging everyone. Family goals. Blessed beyond words. I was not there. But neighbors sent me the links anyway. Some said nothing. Some added laughing emojis. Either way, I saw every single post. At the grocery store, whispers started before I reached the counter. Two clerks leaned close, their voices sharp enough to hear. "That's him," one said. "The guy left at the dock." The other smirked. They chose better. Who could blame them? I set my bread and milk down in silence. The receipt crumpled in my fist as I walked out. I wanted to answer, but silence weighed heavier than anger. So I carried it home, bag straps cutting into my hands. At work, the laughter started before the machines even roared. Coworkers stood around a phone, their faces lit by the screen. I already knew what they were looking at. Another photo of my parents, Daniel between them, smiling wide. The caption read, "Our son made this possible. Proud." But our son wasn't me. It was him. One coworker turned to me and grinned. "Man, your parents finally figured it out." Another added, "Don't feel bad. At least you paid for it." The break room roared. I punched my card, sat down, and stayed quiet. Their voices followed me onto the factory floor. "They say he worked months for those tickets. And Daniel just stepped in and took them. Can you blame the parents? Would you pick him instead?" The machines were loud, but not louder than their laughter. By the end of the shift, my ears rang. Not from steel. From their words. Every laugh hammered deeper. But silence doesn't break. When the ship docked in Greece, more photos appeared. Daniel posting fancy dinners, wine, and sandy beaches. He tagged my parents, calling them Mom and Dad. Hundreds of comments. "What a man! They're so lucky!" Each one erased me further. One evening, I walked past the neighbor's porch. Her phone camera pointed straight at me. "That's him," she whispered. "The useless one." Her friend laughed. "Left behind by his own family." Later, the clip showed up online with a caption. "He stayed. Daniel went." I scrolled through the comments late that night. "Imagine being replaced by your sister's husband. He should be ashamed to show his face. He got what he deserved." I didn't reply. Silence pressed heavier. My mother called once during the trip. Her tone was flat, almost rehearsed. "Don't make a fuss," she said. "Daniel makes things easier." She paused, then added, "We're comfortable now." She said comfortable, like it meant more than blood. Then she hung up before I could speak. I sat in the dark, receipts spread across the table. Every slip carried my name. Every number was mine. Proof that I paid. Proof that I was erased. I stacked them slowly, slid them back into the drawer. Proof waits. Wait waits. Silence waits. When my parents returned, the neighbors threw them a welcome party. I wasn't invited. Music carried down the street, lights filling the windows. Cars lined the block, laughter spilling into the night air. Through the glass, I saw Daniel raise a toast. He stood where I should have been. He clinked glasses with my parents. He smiled with my sister. He looked like he owned the room. I sat on my porch, the house dark and empty. The cheers lasted for hours. The sound carried long after the music stopped. But silence stayed. Silence always stayed. They posted smiles. They posted pride. They posted family. They erased me. Noise fades. Shadows don't. The cruise ended, but the humiliation didn't. When my parents came back, the story followed them home. Neighbors asked about the trip, and they answered with Daniel's name. "He made everything possible," my mother said. "He treats us like gold," my father added proudly. I stood nearby, carrying groceries inside. They didn't mention my name once. The words weren't just for neighbors. They were for me too. Later that week, I went to the market. Two older women stood in line ahead of me. One held her phone, screen glowing with vacation photos. "That's their son-in-law," she said. "The good one." The other nodded. "Not like the useless one they left." They turned as I passed. Their eyes landed on me. Neither smiled. Both laughed. I kept walking, hands gripping the basket tighter. The apples inside rolled bruised from the pressure of my grip. No words came out of my mouth. Only silence. At work, the jokes shifted into stories. One coworker pulled me aside during break. "Hey," he said. "I don't mean to laugh, but..." He showed me a post on his phone. "Daniel hugging my parents," the caption bold. "Proud to be their son. He looks like he belongs," my coworker said. "Man, I wish I had in-laws like that." He laughed once, like it was a compliment. I didn't answer. My silence made him laugh harder. By the end of the week, I knew what they thought. Daniel wasn't just their favorite. He was their son now. And me? I was the ghost standing in their shadow. At home, the receipts waited in the drawer. Each one carried my name, my effort, my time. Each one was proof the tickets were mine to give. But paper doesn't speak unless you make it. For now, they stayed locked away. One evening, I opened them again. The ink felt heavy, the signatures clear. Every line carried weight. Not pride. Not comfort. Weight. My sister visited after the trip, Daniel beside her. They stood in my kitchen like they owned the place. Daniel leaned against the counter, smile sharp, eyes smug. "You should have seen their faces when I surprised them," he said. My sister laughed, brushing hair from her shoulder. "They've never been happier. You could learn something from him." I stood still, the drawer behind me shut tight. Then my father's voice echoed from days before. "Daniel gives us comfort. You give us problems." The words were short, but they cut deeper than all the rest. That night, I sat outside on the porch. The street was quiet, the air colder than usual. But the silence around me wasn't empty. It was full, heavy, waiting. Neighbors walked past, their eyes cutting through me. "That's the one they left," one whispered. "That's the extra," another added. Their footsteps faded. The silence stayed. The next day, I went through the cruise documents again. Buried inside was my signature on the purchase contract. The company had my name, not Daniel's. The rights belonged to me, not them. I held the papers for a long time. Then I put them back. I wasn't ready yet. Not to argue. Not to fight. Not to speak. They called him son. They called me nothing. Wait waits. Silence sharpens. The days after the cruise turned into weeks. But the humiliation didn't fade. If anything, it grew louder. At church, people stopped me at the door. One older man clapped me on the shoulder. "You must be proud of Daniel," he said. "He's the kind of son every parent deserves." His wife added, "Your parents looked so happy with him." I nodded once. I didn't argue. Silence weighed more than words. My sister visited again, Daniel walking beside her. They came not to see me, but to show me. Daniel set his car keys on my table. A brand new car. Shiny. Expensive. "Your parents insisted," he said, smiling wide. "They wanted me to have something reliable for the family." My sister leaned forward, voice sweet but sharp. "You should be grateful. Daniel gives them pride. You never did." I stared at the keys, their reflection catching the light. Then I looked at the drawer behind me. Receipts. Contracts. My proof. I said nothing. At work, a rumor spread faster than steel on the line. "His parents signed everything over to Daniel," someone said. "They don't even mention his name anymore." Another voice. "Can you blame them? Daniel fits. He never did." The foreman laughed the loudest. "Don't worry. He's harmless. He'll never fight back." They were right about one thing. I didn't fight back. Not yet. That weekend, the neighbors hosted a barbecue. From my porch, I could see the crowd. Daniel stood with my parents, flipping burgers like he owned the grill. Children ran past, chanting his name. Uncle Daniel! Uncle Daniel! My father laughed louder than all of them. Someone noticed me on the porch. They raised a glass and shouted, "Why don't you come join us?" "Oh wait, wrong son!" the crowd roared. Even my sister doubled over laughing. Daniel smirked, eyes locking with mine across the yard. I stood. I went inside. I shut the door. But silence doesn't block noise. It sharpens it. That night, I opened the drawer again. Receipts stacked. Contracts signed. Every page carried my name, not his. Every signature was mine, not theirs. The cruise line knew the truth. The bank knew the truth. Paper doesn't smile. Paper doesn't lie. I spread the slips across the table, one by one. The numbers formed a trail. Every dollar. Every shift. Every sacrifice. Not Daniel's. Mine. I folded them back slowly, stacking them with care. Proof doesn't shout. Proof waits. The next day, Daniel pulled up in his new car. He honked once, loud enough for the block to hear. Neighbors gathered, admiring the shine, touching the doors. My parents came outside, clapping his back proudly. "Daniel deserves this," my mother said. "He brings us comfort. He brings us pride." My father's voice cut deeper than all the rest. "He makes life easy. You never did." The neighbors nodded in agreement. Some even applauded. Daniel leaned against the hood, grinning wider. I stood at the window, curtains pulled just enough to see. I didn't smile. I didn't wave. I didn't move. That evening, I sat in silence at the kitchen table. The drawer behind me held weight. More weight than laughter. More weight than pride. Paper heavier than gold. They gave him keys. They gave him pride. They gave him my place. But paper doesn't smile. Paper doesn't lie. And silence sharpens. The days blended into each other, but the whispers didn't stop. Every corner of town carried my name, spoken like a curse. At the hardware store, two men leaned near the shelves. "That's him," one said. "The one Daniel replaced?" The other laughed. Hard to imagine being that useless. I picked up nails, paid in cash, and left in silence. The bag of tools cut into my hand. But the weight felt lighter than the words. At work, the foreman called me over. "You're late," he said, though I wasn't. He smiled wide, waiting for the others to hear. "Maybe Daniel can show you how to be responsible." The crew laughed on cue, as if rehearsed. I nodded once, said nothing, and walked back to my station. Silence burned hotter than the machines. At home, the drawer still waited. Receipts, contracts, slips, stacked in quiet order. I spread them across the table, lining them row by row. Each one told the same story: I paid. Each one carried the same truth: they erased me. But now the papers were not just proof. They were tools. Tools cut sharper than words. I folded them carefully, slid them into an envelope. For the first time, I didn't put them back. For the first time, the silence moved forward. My sister came again, Daniel at her side. He leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, voice dripping pride. "You should come around more. They're happier now than ever." My sister added, "You could learn something from Daniel. He fits." I stared at them both, envelope heavy in my pocket. I didn't speak. I didn't smile. But I didn't put the envelope away. That weekend, neighbors gathered again. Music, laughter, cars lined along the street. Daniel stood in the center, glass raised, smile wide. My parents sat beside him, nodding proudly at every word. A woman whispered loud enough for me to hear. "He deserves it all. The house. The trust. The name." Another laughed. "The other one? He's just background noise." I stood at my porch, envelope pressed against my palm. Their noise filled the block. My silence pressed heavier. Later that night, I opened the envelope again. Each page stared back at me, waiting. Names. Dates. Numbers. Signatures. All mine. None his. The house. The account. The tickets. Every one tied back to me. I stacked them slowly, feeling the weight build. Proof doesn't shout. Proof waits. And I was almost done waiting. They gave him praise. They gave him trust. They gave him my place. Paper doesn't vanish. Paper doesn't forgive. Silence cuts deepest. The envelope no longer stayed hidden. I carried it with me everywhere. At work. At the store. Even at home on the table. The weight wasn't paper anymore. It was a weapon. One morning, Daniel pulled up in his car again. He honked once, loud, the sound echoing through the block. Neighbors gathered like it was a parade. My parents came outside, waving, proud as ever. Daniel leaned across the hood, smiling wide. Family first, he said. That's why they chose me. My father clapped his back. You give us comfort. He never could. Laughter followed, sharp and loud. I stood at the window, envelope pressed against my palm. I didn't wave. I didn't smile. At work, the foreman called me over again. Hey, he said. Why don't you take some notes from Daniel? The crew burst into laughter, every face turned toward me. I reached into my pocket, fingers brushing the envelope. Not yet. Not here. But soon. The laughter faded behind me as I walked away. Silence followed. And silence waited. That night, I visited the bank. The clerk looked at the papers, eyes narrowing as she read. Your name is on all of this, she said quietly. Yes, I replied. She stamped the file. The sound echoed louder than every laugh I'd heard all month. The next weekend, my parents hosted another dinner. Daniel stood at the head of the table, glass raised high. My sister sat beside him, eyes shining with pride. Neighbors crowded the yard, music loud, plates full. I walked in through the side gate. Silence fell for a second, then whispers started. That's him. The extra one. Why is he here? Daniel smirked, lifting his glass. Didn't think he'd show up, he said. I didn't answer. I slipped the envelope onto the table in front of him. Every eye in the room followed the motion. Daniel's smile faltered for the first time. The neighbors leaned closer, whispering sharper now. What's that? What's he doing? My father's voice tried to cover the silence. Whatever this is, don't ruin the evening. But his words shook. Daniel opened the envelope, fingers trembling slightly. Pages spilled out across the table. Receipts. Contracts. Signatures. Dates. Every line tied back to me. Not him. His smile cracked. My sister's eyes widened. My parents stared at the papers like they had never seen them before. The silence grew heavier than the music. The crowd waited. I said nothing. I didn't need to. They laughed for weeks. They laughed in my face. They laughed in every room. Now silence was theirs. And silence weighed more. The silence around the table grew heavier. Papers lay scattered across the wood like shattered glass. Receipts. Contracts. My signature on every line. Neighbors leaned closer, whispers slicing through the air. That's his name. Not Daniel's. Everything belongs to him. My father's hands trembled as he reached for the papers. This can't be right. But the words were weak. They sounded smaller than the stamp from the bank. Daniel's face drained of color. The smile he wore for weeks cracked completely. He pushed the papers back, as if they burned. This doesn't change anything, he said, voice sharp but shaking. My sister leaned forward, desperate, her voice high. Stop this. Just stop. You're ruining everything. Her words fell flat into silence. The crowd didn't laugh this time. They only watched. The neighbors picked up the papers, reading line by line. He paid. His name's on the contract. All of it, it's his. Whispers spread faster than fire. The same people who mocked me now whispered differently. Their eyes turned to Daniel, not me. Not with praise. With doubt. My mother finally spoke. Why now? Why bring this here? Her voice cracked in the middle. She already knew the answer. Comfort blinded her. Pride cost her. And silence sharpened me. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Daniel stood, slamming his hand against the table. This doesn't prove anything. They chose me. Not him. The words echoed, but the papers spoke louder. No one looked at him. They only looked at the truth spread on the table. My father's voice broke again. Daniel, enough. For the first time, his eyes didn't hold pride. They held shame. I gathered the papers slowly, stacking them with care. Every page slid back into the envelope. The silence followed every movement. When I finally stood, the crowd parted without a word. No laughter. No smiles. Only silence. I walked out the gate, the night colder than before. Behind me, the noise didn't return. Not one laugh followed me home. Not one voice dared to mock. Silence was theirs now. In my house, I placed the envelope back in the drawer. The weight wasn't the same anymore. It was lighter. Because it wasn't mine alone. It belonged to them now. And they couldn't erase it. They wanted pride. They wanted comfort. They wanted him. Proof cut deeper. Silence lasted longer. Noise fades. Truth doesn't.